Okay, sorry, I've been away for a while when it comes to content creation. I've been preoccupied with a lot of local jobs, a documentary that I'm working on, but also I kitted out my garage as well. But today we have to talk about the Nikon range. Whether we like it or not, if we're a Sony shooter, Lumix, Canon, Nikon are cooking up something big, specifically when it comes to that Z cinema range. You know, we did see the Nikon ZR, which I own, which is a phenomenal camera, but it is missing a few things, and there has to be a progression path with this. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. Now, we do have to talk about, obviously, 2025 and 2026 was pretty much dominantly owned by Lumix with the S1R2, the S1 II, and then Canon with their releases. I think it was the R6 Mark III, the R5 Mark II, the R50. What else was there? I can't even remember. There's so many different cameras that Canon released, and they've been incredible releases as well. And that's what sort of gets me excited, is that, you know, Sony and Nikon are sort of waiting and biding their time, and it feels like something big is going to drop. Definitely with Sony as well, but I did discuss that with the potential FX3 Mark II. Definitely watch that video. But we're going to talk about the Z cinema range because I do feel like there is another camera coming. And that's one thing that Nikon really need to dive deep into, because they don't really have a cinema range. Kind of like, you know, Canon have their C50, C70, C80, the C sort of range, the cinema range. Lumix have their, Panasonic have their cinema range as well, which they don't really dive too deep into, but maybe they will as well. And obviously Sony have their FX and Cine Ultra range, which, you know, they've dived into. That's where, you know, Nikon just really need to do exactly what Canon have just started doing, utilizing the same sensor that's in other bodies and just bringing it to a different body. Because image quality seems to sort of plateaued at the moment when it comes to dynamic range, when it comes to frame rates and resolutions. All cameras are starting to look very similar, and the playing ground is becoming extremely even. Now it starts to become more about ergonomics, more about just making the videographer, content creator, cinematographer's life easier by giving them different features that normally would be not available in smaller bodies, or just making things a lot easier for them to actually create the content. And this is where we've seen the Z cinema lenses have, you know, been leaked. Nikon have teased it with their Z cinema lenses, and I'm extremely excited about them because they're not just manual focus lenses. They are autofocus lenses, which we do know. We did see that autofocus to manual focus switch. And we also did see the Z cinema lens that I brought on this channel, what was it? The large zoom. I think it was the 28 to 135 lens. I think it was f4. That was a phenomenal lens. Amazing for filmmakers, I suppose documentary filmmakers as well. It's a great lens to sort of have, but we have seen that they have a whole bunch of different lenses that they're going to bring out, which is extremely exciting, but not enough cinema bodies to work with. Now, I know you can actually utilize this with the red Komodo, was it the red Raptor as well, because they do have that Z mount, which is incredible that they actually swapped those over. Incredible for me because I have the Megadap adapter, which you can put all E-mount lenses on Nikon cameras. I mean, you have to admit, Nikon made that Z mount from the F mount, specifically that size, I guarantee, so they can actually utilize Sony E-mount lenses in the future. I mean, it has to be a sneaky move to try and get so many Sony users over to this system. And I mean, you know, it hooked me. I've got the Nikon ZR and I can use this as much as I like because I have so many E-mount lenses. With my Lumix S5 2X, I can't use it that much because I only have the 50mm L mount lens, but I have a PL mount adapter to L mount, so I can use all my PL cinema glass. But if I want autofocus, I've only got that. If I want autofocus with my Nikon ZR, I've got a whole bunch of Sony lenses that I can utilize on this thing. And finally, Canon have kind of, you know, caught on that, oh, well, Sony's, you know, recycling all these lenses and putting them in different bodies. Why don't we do the same? And Nikon have done that obviously with the Nikon ZR because it's the Z6 Mark III 24.5 partially stacked sensor. And another really amazing sensor that they do have is the Z8 and Z9, which is an 8K capable camera, 4K, 120 frames per second full frame. So that sensor should be in a body like this. And this is where I do feel like we have to talk about that sensor in a body like this and a couple of different tweaks to really optimize that sensor in image quality. Now, obviously that sensor allows, I think it's 8K 60 frames per second, but also 4K up to 120 frames per second, no crop as well. So full frame, that's amazing. And then if they add it into a body like this with this large 4-inch flip screen, I mean, that is to die for. I will buy one absolutely immediately. Specifically, if it has that better H.265 codec that we do see in the Nikon Z8 and the Z series in terms of Z6 Mark III, this H.265 will eventually be firmware updated and it would be better. But utilizing that Z8 sensor in here and having R3D-NE on that sensor, oh my God, I cannot wait for that one. Now, one thing I would like to see changed is just that grip. Like, I understand they want it small, they want it compact, and they want it to be able to be portable as possible, but I'm just not a fan of the Nikon ZR when it comes to it by itself. You have to have a cage on it. And straight away, I bought that small rig cage. Absolutely recommend it. I know there are so many other brands out now that have a very similar cage that gives you a grip. It makes it far more usable. And will they do it in a ZR8 sort of style camera? I don't know, but it would be nice to see that. Now, also, if they do have a higher end version of this Nikon ZR, you have to have a full-size HDMI. I mean, micro HDMI is so painful. Like, I understand the reason why they had the micro HDMI, because majority of people will utilize that extremely large 4-inch screen. But a lot of the times I like to monitor with an actual monitor. And especially if you're using anamorphic lenses, there's no D-squeeze in here. And you need to utilize those D-squeeze tools in the monitor to be able to monitor the image. Plus, I like using 7-inch monitors sometimes. But I mean, they did design this so you can just use this as is, which is still nice. But a full-size HDMI would be nice. Now, because potentially it would have that Nikon Z8 sensor in there, I mean, heat generation, like it's a smaller body, like it's not terribly small. It's very similar to the FX3. You would just imagine there would be a fan in here just to help with cooling, a bit of active cooling, specifically because it is in a Z cinema range. It's not in a hybrid sort of style body. So it's more video first. So you would expect there to be potentially active cooling and some vents in here. And if it has a, high resolution sensor, it will generate a little bit more heat. So it would be nice to see some vents in this one. Now, one major gripe that a lot of people were having was obviously that memory card directly into the base. And a lot of people were getting annoyed because, it's in the base. If you have it on a tripod or gimbal, you can't access that memory card. Look, I don't really care too much because this has Arca-Swiss plate. I can actually just slide it off, open it up, take it out, slide it back on. This is me personally. This is how I shoot. I'm personally not changing out memory cards on the fly absolutely all the time. If you have a large enough CF Express Type B card, you should be able to get away with, one card per shoot. It really depends. If you're using ProRes RAW or R3D-NE, I mean, these cards will eventually fill up. Like, this is a 650 gigabyte card. I know some people have the 1 terabyte cards and they last like half an hour with those kind of red codecs. So you will be changing those out, but you do have to think, if you're filming red codec all the time, data storage is going to be insane, specifically now with, storage becoming extremely expensive because of stupid AI data centers. That's a whole nother story on its own and it's killing us creators. But back to my point, if they had the memory card on the side like they do with pretty much all the other cameras, it would be just a little bit better. And then obviously that brings me to my other point, is that it is only one card slot. For me personally, I only ever shoot on one card. I rely on quality cards and just shoot on that. I don't dual record. I know a lot of people are going to dual record. That's fine. You do you. I'd probably recommend it in, high stakes situations. But I just haven't found that my cards corrupt because I generally get the best cards possible. but it would be nice to see a second card slot. Now it does have that micro HDMI, which feels like you could leave a micro HDMI in there and it will just be like a small H.265 capable memory card that can stay in the camera in case you forget that CF Express Type B card. And that's what I've told a lot of people, that it's kind of like internal storage in a way. But the biggest takeaway from this video is that we have to expect absolutely big things coming from that Z Cinema range, specifically when it comes to the lens range, because, you know, Nikon right now have really, really large lenses. And if they're releasing small compact bodies, they're going to need slightly smaller compact lenses. And I know they can do it. They have the technology. They did make the 70-200, the recent version, much, much smaller and pretty much identical size to Sony's range. I do believe they actually made it a little bit lighter than Sony and Canon, which, you know, is a bit of a flex. So I know that they can make slightly smaller 50mm fast lenses, 24mm fast lenses, and it would be nice to see those Z Cinema versions, and I cannot wait for those to drop. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, what we would potentially see from a Pro version, or potentially will we see a new sensor or that same Z8 sensor directly in a ZR sort of style body? What would you like to see changed from this or upgraded? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and definitely stay tuned, because I hope I will be getting a pre-release version of whatever will be coming out. So definitely stay tuned for that. And obviously a Sony version as well. So yeah, subscribe, like, comment, share, whatever. See you guys in the next one. All right, let's get it.